In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, July 11th, here in South Korea. President Yoon Suk-yeol arrives in the host city of this year's NATO summit Monday evening for talks with the world's largest security alliance that begins on Tuesday for a two-day run. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong accuses U.S. Air Forces of violating North Korea's exclusive economic zone on several occasions Monday alone. Seoul's top diplomat Park Jin is in Indonesia this week to meet with his ASEAN counterparts and to partake in the ASEAN Plus 3 meeting, as well as the ASEAN Regional Forum. President Yoon Suk-yeol landed in Lithuania on Monday, a day ahead of the two-day NATO summit that will also include a host of bilateral exchanges with leaders in Europe, as well as from the broader Asia-Pacific on the sidelines. Our senior presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young files this report from the host city.
South Korea will upgrade its relations with the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance across 11 strategic areas as President Yoon Suk-yeol attends the two-day security summit in the Lithuanian capital. Yoon arrived in Vilnius on Monday, a day ahead of the summit, marking a second time attending the annual meeting, having become the first South Korean leader to participate last year. South Korea subsequently established a permanent mission to the 31-member alliance. At the Vilnius meeting, Seoul will look to adopt an individually tailored partnership programme with NATO, elevating the bilateral cooperation arrangement they've had for the past 11 years to focus on 11 areas, including cybersecurity, non-proliferation and emerging technologies. The document will be adopted at a meeting between Yoon and NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday, according to a senior presidential official, who added that discussions would also cover ways to expand information sharing among NATO allies, including the United States. This comes as Yoon looks to promote greater Pacific Atlantic cooperation, with support and restoration efforts for Ukraine high on NATO's agenda, along with growing geopolitical and nuclear tensions across the globe. On that note, President Yoon will moderate a meeting with his counterparts from Japan, Australia and New Zealand on Wednesday, convening as NATO's 4 Asian-Pacific partners across the globe.
In addition to establishing a mutual partnership for a norm-based international order, the president will discuss with member states and partner countries how to respond to North Korea's nuclear missiles and emphasize the international community's resolute and united cooperation against North Korea's illegal activities.
In that regard, the South Korean leader has said there will be several opportunities for him to engage with President Joe Biden and touch on topics such as Washington's security commitment and the expansion of trilateral security cooperation with Japan. There's a chance that the two leaders could meet at a banquet event for NATO's partners on Tuesday evening. A separate meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is being arranged, with the agenda likely to include North Korea and Tokyo's plan to release Fukushima's wastewater into the ocean, which has been a bilateral sticking point. But first, Yoon will meet around 6 US lawmakers on Tuesday, including Pete Ricketts, and presumably discuss issues related to security and bilateral ties, according to a senior presidential official. The official added that Yoon will also sit down for bilaterals with leaders of various nations, including the Netherlands and Norway, as he spotlights supply chain security and Korea's bid to host the 2030 World Expo in the coastal city of Busan. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Vilnius.
And staying with NATO-related news, in a tangible shift in stance, Türkiye has shared intentions to place its weight behind Sweden's bid to join the world's largest security alliance. Our Isinja has the latest.
According to NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg on Monday, Türkiye has agreed to back Sweden's bid to join the NATO military alliance.
I have just had a constructive meeting with President Erdogan and Prime Minister Kristersson. I am glad to announce that as a result, President Erdogan has agreed to forward the accession protocol for Sweden to the Grand National Assembly as soon as possible, and work closely with the Assembly to ensure ratification.
The announcement came after Stoltenberg held talks with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson in Lithuania. The decision on Sweden's NATO bid comes despite Erdogan insisting on Monday that Sweden should be considered for the military alliance after Turkey joins the European Union. Despite the support from Türkiye, Stoltenberg said this does not mean Sweden will immediately become the next member of the alliance and refrained from giving a specific timeline for membership.
I will not give you exact dates for that, but this is a clear commitment, and the President has made it clear that it will happen as soon as possible.
Ultimately, Erdogan's decision marked a significant U-turn from a previous firm stance against Sweden's attempts to join. Türkiye had mainly opposed Sweden's NATO membership due to claims that the Nordic nation allows members of recognized Kurdish terror groups to operate in the country, most notably the militant Kurdistan Workers' Party. It also recently accused Sweden of allowing Islamophobic demonstrations, such as the burning of the Quran. Despite this, the NATO chief said the two sides had worked closely together to address Turkey's legitimate security concerns, leading to the breakthrough. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
North Korea has made yet another allegation of American intrusion into its territory. Tuesday's allegation was made by Kim Yo-jong, who claimed U.S. Air Forces had violated North Korea's exclusive economic zone. Our Song Yoo-jin reports.
For the second straight day, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong has threatened that there will be consequences for the U.S. sending spy planes over Pyongyang's exclusive economic zone. In a statement carried by the North state-run Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday, Kim claimed that a U.S. spy plane entered the regime's EEZ 8 times on Monday. She added that if the U.S. continues such actions, its military will experience, quote, a very risky flight. This comes after Kim alleged Monday evening that the North's warplanes repelled a U.S. spy plane that flew over its EEZ, calling it a grave violation of the regime's sovereignty and security. Earlier in the day, the North's defense ministry released a statement which seemed to imply that the spy planes intruded into the regime's territorial airspace, saying that the planes flew into its inviolable airspace. Territorial airspace extends 12 nautical miles from the coast, whereas the EEZ extends 200 miles and is not considered a country's airspace under international law. In response, the U.S. State Department urged Pyongyang to refrain from escalating tensions and reiterated that Washington is open to dialogue. When talking about Kim's remarks, Pentagon Deputy Spokesperson Sabrina Singh said that Washington remains committed to safely and responsibly flying, sailing, and operating anywhere that international law allows. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff also responded.
U.S. air surveillance assets conduct routine reconnaissance flights around the Korean peninsula, and North Korea's claim of airspace violation is not true. We strongly urge the North to immediately stop creating tension with these false claims.
Experts say such actions could be a way for the North to justify its future provocations, which could take place sometime before or after a major military parade planned for July 27th, known as Victory Day in the regime. Another possible reason could be the first nuclear consultative group meeting between South Korea and the U.S. that'll take place in Seoul next Tuesday. The group, which was launched during President Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit to the U.S. in April, will discuss information sharing, consultation mechanisms, joint planning, and execution to increase nuclear deterrence against North Korea. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Officials of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations are gathered in Indonesia today for talks on regional concerns that will be followed by expanded dialogue on security matters under the framework of the ASEAN Regional Forum on Friday. Foreign Minister Pak Jin will begin his agenda in Jakarta on Wednesday. Our Ian Jin reports.
The ASEAN senior officials meeting convened on Tuesday with senior officials from the 10 ASEAN countries and Timor-Leste in attendance ahead of the 56th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting. High on the agenda for Southeast Asia's top diplomats will be the crisis in Myanmar and the tensions in the South China Sea, with Japan's planned release of treated radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear plant also set to be discussed. While South Korea has expressed that it respects the recent report from the IAEA, China is continuing its opposition, with a meeting arranged where Beijing will urge ASEAN members to put pressure on Tokyo to halt the water discharge plan. South Korean Foreign Minister Pak Jin is also set to attend the meeting from Wednesday and will take part in a number of sideline meetings. He's scheduled to join the South Korean ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting and the ASEAN +3 meeting on Thursday, and will take part in the East Asia Summit meeting and the ASEAN Regional Forum on Friday. In between the sessions, Park could potentially hold separate bilateral talks with his Japanese and Chinese counterparts, where Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi may explain to Park the findings of the IAEA's report on Tokyo's plan to discharge contaminated water from the Fukushima nuclear plant, with South Korea also presenting its own assessment of the discharge plan. 이은진, Arirang News.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says she made it clear to Beijing that Washington will not back down from protecting its national security. Speaking on a Marketplace podcast on Monday, Yellen pointed to Beijing's own export controls on essential chip-making materials, similar to Washington's earlier curbs, underscoring the two countries' priority on national interest and security. When asked about China's response to her latest remarks, she said concern was voiced about an economic competition, one that may extend beyond national security. To this concern, she reportedly explained that U.S. export controls are aimed at diversifying supply chains and not to secure unfair leverage. Korea's exports during the first 10 days of this month fell on year amid shrinking shipments of semiconductors and overall shipments to neighboring China. According to the Korea Customs Service on this Tuesday, the value of exports dropped 14.8% on year to $13.2 billion. Exports of chips plunged some 37% on year. By destination, exports to Korea's largest trading partner, China, tumbled 20.6% on year. Accordingly, Korea's trade deficit stands at $28.7 billion thus far this year. Korea's fiction-related web content industry has sealed an export deal worth some $5.3 million with a number of Europe-based companies. According to the Korea Creative Content Agency, 15 domestic firms were in Paris last week to partake in the 2023 K-Story and Comics in Europe. The event sought to promote Korean web-based content, including novels, comics, and games. More than 300 business counseling sessions took place during the four-day event, and several contracts were signed to export Korean web-based content to firms in European countries, including France and Spain. A similar event will be held in North America and Germany later this year. The government has approved a revision to the TV license fee collection method. Accordingly, the mandatory fee of 2,500 won, or around $2 per month, will not be collected automatically through electricity bills. Presiding over a cabinet meeting on this Tuesday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo said this change in the 29-year-old policy will help citizens be more aware of what they're paying for. The license fee collected is distributed mainly to KBS, the nation's main public broadcaster, with a small portion going to the Educational Broadcasting System, or EBS. President Yoon Suk-yeol is expected to put the law into effect immediately by signing it electronically, as he is currently overseas. The government is finalizing a new collection system to start as soon as possible. Korea is sharing its rice production technology with its counterparts in Africa as part of broader efforts to bolster the continent's food self-sufficiency. Our Lee Soo-jin has details.
South Korea is accelerating efforts to expand its K-Ricebelt project. The nation signed MOUs on Monday with 8 African countries to establish rice cultivation facilities and provide the necessary infrastructure to meet growing demand on the continent. The K-Ricebelt project seeks to produce 10,000 tons of rice seeds each year starting in 2027 in the 8 African nations. That's expected to supply enough rice for around 30 million people. The participating countries are Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Gambia, Senegal, Cameroon, Uganda, and Kenya. But other nations are also welcome to participate, as South Korea is ready to share its experience of going from an aid recipient to an aid donor with more countries.
We would like to see all 23 countries in Africa that we're currently working with participate in the program, as we want to contribute to helping Africa overcome its food crisis based on our own experiences.
The project is especially meaningful because the K-Ricebelt project contributes to South Korea's sustainable development goals.
We're trying to solve famine in Africa. As such, this is ultimately contributing to sustainable agriculture as well as the UN SDGs.
Rice consumption in sub-Saharan Africa has been increasing by 6% each year. But because most African countries have not yet achieved rice self-sufficiency, regional output covers only 60% of the demand, making them more vulnerable to food insecurity. We sat down with the Republic of Guinea's Minister of Agriculture and Livestock to ask him what the K-Ricebelt project means to his country.
Thanks to the relationship with South Korea, which can allow us to increase rice productivity so that we can move from 1.5 tons per hectare to at least 5 to 6 tons per hectare.
He is also not too concerned about the challenges that may arise because of the way the K-Ricebelt has been designed.
Not just a financing support, it's also a technical support, it's also a technological transfer project.
He said that's why he believes that this will have a huge impact on Guinea. He added that he, along with the other ministers, will be visiting Korea's rice production and farming equipment facilities during their visit. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, a state-run center that offers support for settlement into South Korea for North Korean defectors marked its 24th anniversary back on Monday, with the Unification Ministry here highlighting the importance of fostering a social environment of greater acceptance. Our ministry correspondent Kim Mo-kyeon has more.
From now on, the government will establish a system that supports the needs of the defectors and also work to create a social environment that embraces defectors from North Korea.
That's what South Korea's Unification Minister said during his opening remarks to celebrate the 24th anniversary of the establishment of Hanawon on Monday. In order for the government to successfully reach such a goal, Kwon stressed the need for Korean citizens' perception of defectors to be more positive and open. Hanawon, located in Ansong, southeast of Seoul, is a state-run facility that since 1999 has provided a 12-week resettlement education program for new defectors from North Korea. It helps defectors protect their identity, trains them to get used to South Korean society, and supports them financially so that they can be taught how to make a living for themselves. But recent data from the ministry show that the number of defectors dropped significantly from around 3,000 in 2010 to 1,000 in 2012 when Kim Jong-un took power. The figure declined even more rapidly with the impact of COVID-19, reaching only 67 in 2022. According to one female defector who spoke on condition of anonymity, she lived a difficult life in the border area between the two Koreas, and COVID-19 made things even worse, so she decided to come to South Korea with the hope of living a life in a country where human rights were guaranteed.
We learned a lot about South Korea through the inflow of Korean dramas. What motivated me to come is the fact that there's hope for one person to live a better life if one strives for it here.
Other defectors also expressed gratitude to Hanawon for giving them autonomy to choose their own life options. They say the institute carries a lot of significance, as the training that they received there gave them the opportunity to think about what they wanted to do with their lives in the future. Kim Mo-kyeon, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Russia, the Kremlin says that President Vladimir Putin met with mercenary Wagner Group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin 5 days after Prigozhin's failed mutiny in June. According to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, 35 of the group's commanders, including Prigozhin, were invited to a 3-hour meeting with Putin in Moscow. There, the Russian leader gave an assessment of the Wagner Group's Ukraine war effort and the mutiny, and suggested ways the group could be used for future combat. Prigozhin also reportedly told Putin that the mercenary group supports the president unconditionally. Currently, Prigozhin's whereabouts are unknown. He was offered a move to Belarus and for charges against him to be dropped in exchange for ending the mutiny. In Europe, nearly 62,000 people died last summer from heat-related deaths. The numbers were published in the science journal Nature Medicine on Monday. The deaths were recorded between May 30th and September 4th, 2022, during what was the continent's hottest summer on record. The country hardest hit was Italy, with 18,000 fatalities, followed by Spain with 11,000 deaths and Germany with 8,000 deaths. The study also found that the heat-related mortality rate was 63% higher in women than men, and those aged over 65 were more likely to die from the heat. The death toll comes amid increasing European temperatures that have risen almost twice as fast as the global average. Residents in South Africa's eastern city of Johannesburg woke up to surprise snow on Monday. It was the first time snow fell in the country's largest city since 2012 and came on the back of extremely cold and wet conditions still ongoing throughout most of the country. According to the South African Weather Service, Johannesburg recorded its coldest day of the year on the same day at -3 degrees Celsius. While certain mountainous parts of South Africa do see occasional snowfall, it's a sight rarely seen in the country's major cities. Although the snow caused no major issues for the region, the Weather Service has issued a warning for potential disruptive snowfall in the southeast KwaZulu-Natal province, including icy roads and traffic disruptions. And finally, the Netherlands has officially handed back hundreds of cultural artifacts it took from Indonesia during colonial times. They were returned during a ceremony on Monday at the Museum Volkenkunde in Leiden. The items range from 13th century temple carvings to jewelry and small statues. The return follows an announcement by the Dutch government to return looted items from both Indonesia as well as Sri Lanka. It's also considering returning some artifacts to Nigeria. Other European nations have also made plans to return items taken during their colonial periods. In January, a museum in Berlin announced plans to return hundreds of human skulls to former East African colonies. And Belgium last year returned a gold-capped tooth that belonged to Congolese independence hero Patrice Lumumba. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The rainy season is in full swing, and until tomorrow, Chungcheongdo and Jeollado provinces could see up to 150 millimeters. Central regions could receive more than 120 millimeters. Rain will pick up in the afternoon, accompanied by strong gusts of wind. And when it starts to rain, it could pour down 30 to 60 millimeters an hour, so please stay alert and safe. Such conditions mean landslides are a possibility. Along with showers, heat relief is expected today, but heat advisories remain in place for most of the southern provinces. Now, Jeju Island saw a record high of 37.3 degrees yesterday, the fourth highest temperatures recorded since 1923. But there is a slight relief this afternoon. It's Chobok today, the beginning of some of the most sizzling days of the year in Korea, and we need to brace for sweltering heat day and night for about a month now. Expect to see rain for the rest of the week, featuring an abundance of humidity. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the headlines at this hour, but do stay with us for our panel session on K-pop today coming up next. Thank you for now.